It's that time again. It is Thursday. Welcome to Brewing Controversy. I am Lucas. This is David. And
Hello.
this Thursday night, we're going to be diving into a really fun topic, GQP and their war on women. But first, we have a few other
Hey,
things.
ladies.
Yep. It's
Sorry.
ladies' night here at Brewing Controversy. That's about all I've got. I'm going to use up all the energy I have. So I've been feeling under the weather today and a little bit yesterday. Tonight I'm going to be riffing on that not feeling great theme in an ironically still beer kind of way. But anyway, if you're here, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming. Say hi. Feel free to comment. We love to welcome everybody in when they show up. David, how are you?
I'm well. I mean, I'm not as under the weather as you. I mean, the worst I can say is that with the change in weather, it's this year's a little fuzzy. But other than that,
have you been through?
It's nice. I get to wear my flannels again, which are just so much nicer. I have my windows open because I don't need to run my AC or my heat.
What's the temperature?
So,
what's the temperature there?
Right now, probably about in the low 60s, heading to the 50s right now.
That's good. That's nice.
Right? And now, for those of you who don't understand southern weather, and I know I hate to talk about like the weather on the show because it sounds just so prosaic. But you know, like the way the South normally has this thing is we get a little bit of fall, and then when we get third summer, right?
Third summer.
We get third summer.
Second breakfast.
And also known as by many women as swamp bra summer, because it's just awful, and you've already like gotten all your winter clothes out. But this year, as a lot of people noted, summer clocked out and actually left.
That's nice to hear.
Summer
that was one of my big complaints.
Summer decided to quiet quit.
I love it. Yeah, I've been through. I don't know if it's been. I guess it hasn't been as back and forth for you. Here in Grand Rapids, it's been some civil manic back and forth kind of crazy weather. Right now, I think maybe it was 50 something today. It's 40 something outside. It's going to get into the 30s overnight. It's been doing that. But this weekend it's going to get into low 70s, but still like high 30s, low 40s at night. And then it's going to go back to what fall is supposed to be like, where the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, we're headed for that next week.
It's all over the place.
I mean, the only problem for us is that when it starts doing that for us, that means start listening for the sirens, because when the temperature, just again in the South, when the temperature starts going way up and then way down and then way up and way down, that's what creates tornadoes. And so lots of fun there.
For those that have never tuned in, if there's anybody new that watches now or plays back later, David's in Nashville, my hometown. I'm in Grand Rapids. We have almost direct alignment like this on the map, but very different experiences in the weather.
Yeah, and you're about getting ready to have your first real winter there.
No.
Second real winter.
Yes.
There, it's
been that fine. Long. It's not a problem. Everybody up here is like, "Are you ready for winter?" Like I had one last year. Thank you. I actually like winter. Those that know me know that I just don't like anything half-assed. So,
well, I mean, this is
half-assed winter. It's just a mess. You can make a snowman out of mud and leaves.
I went to undergrad with a lot of Northerners, and the thing that was always, they'd always be like, "Oh, I'm so happy about the summers down here," and I'm like, "Why?" Well,
yeah, right.
It's so cold and snowy up there, up in Boston, and I'm just like, can I go there? That would be nice. I mean, this is the thing I think most Northerners don't understand that Southerners very much do, which is in summer, I'm having to moderate my air conditioning because it can't keep up. And I'm sleeping with like 3 fans on me and like the thinnest blanket I can possibly find just to like not sweat through my mattress. Right. And The thing about summer versus winter is this, and I get it, it gets very cold, right? But here's the thing about when it gets cold. When it gets cold in my house, I just put on more clothes.
Right.
And I go to sleep in more clothes, right? It's fine. When it gets too hot, here's the thing. I could strip naked.
And you can only get so naked.
Too hot.
You can only get so naked. I mean, there's a limit. Well, anyway, if you've never been here before, we start the show off with a little something we like to call Hot Take Happy Hour. This is a few short banterings about multiple news topics that are on the top of the list for the day, or really owning the week's news cycle. So this is the part where we like to kind of kick around some things that are last minute, things that are just happening, sometimes right before the show. One of those just came up tonight. And in this format, we do this, that we do a pet topic. You can tell my under the weather brain is fired up. A pet topic for one of us, and then the main topic. So if you're here to talk about the war on women, hang out with us. If you come in later on, you won't miss it. But next week, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to invite folks to join us. We've already got several folks committed. So if you're out there and you ever thought, hey, I could be on the internet in a little box like the Brady Bunch and make fun of Republicans with these two guys, next week is the time. We're going to have a little Halloween party here. Our Halloween episode will be an election preview discussion, mostly going to talk about what's coming up in the election. And then, of course, we'll have to have an election night special, so we'll be on top of that. When we do talk to everybody on Halloween, or the Halloween episode, we would love, if you're not in one of our towns, come prepared to tell us about who the nuts are that you're trying to defeat on your ballot. So if you want in on that, get in touch with us, message the page on Facebook, message one of us personally if you know us. Love to have people involved. So let's take on some hot takes, man. This is the time when David was left unsupervised with the ticker, and he's gone full alliteration.
I went full 1920s newsy on everything.
You really did. So the first thing off the top is that Trump, the difference between Trump and real gangsters is that they knew when to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And Trump's been shooting himself in the ass pretty effectively in any way that he possibly can this week.
Well, I mean, this whole thing with the defamation suit was just incredible, because the thing is, he had an excellent defense to start out with, which was, you can't sue me because I was a federal employee. I was commenting as a federal employee. You can't sue the federal government for defamation. Therefore, your suit fails.
Yeah, that was Barr's creation, I believe.
Yeah, and then
for those that don't know, this is the lady. It's hard to keep track of all the rape accusations, but this is the lady that I think was a store employee way back when she was younger and hotter, and not to be insensitive, it's just to set up a joke. And back when he was younger and still just as fugly, but for some reason he decided to come on to this lady in a department store or maybe dressing room. Anyway, the dispute is not in court over whether or not he did shit to this lady. It's over the fact that he dragged her around the public space, defaming her for telling her story, and Barr gave him the silver platter way out to say, "Oh, sorry, said it from the federal government Twitter account," or somewhat.
Yeah.
And now he's not shut up, so he's saying things that he can't use that defense for.
No, I mean, because he repeated his defamatory comments. So he's done. And then he turned around and he represented to the federal government that, hey, by the way, back then when you first asked, I had actually turned in all the classified documents that you asked for, that the National Archive asked for. And then it turned out, of course, he now is stating, no, I didn't actually do that. I was just, they're mine. which now goes back on again.
They're mine. This is mine.
Sworn testimony that he made about this whole incident. I mean, it's incredible. All he has to do is shut up, and he refuses to shut up.
Oh, and now apparently he's going to let him maybe do another supervised search in Mar-a-Lago. Who knows what kind of fake ass bullshit they're going to stage for them to find in that particular search. Like, I can't wait to see that. Like, just, oh my God. Well, anyway, let's shift gears to your other favorite rich asshole in the world. David, as many know, has a raging hate boner for Elon Musk. So it's time for a boner alert.
I actually, boner alert. Right before the show, so I had a friend who's she's in a class to learn JavaScript, and the reward at the end of learning how to write a script to add 3.5 years to everything is, at the end it says, and in this amount of time we will be sending people to live on Mars. And of course my general response to this, for those of you who don't know, my massive hate boner for people who are like, we're gonna go live on Mars. I'm like, no, you can't. That's not how any of this works. So I mean, it was a lot of fun, and now I get to do this. So for those of you who don't know, Musk and Kanye West have now announced that they're going to buy Parler, everyone's favorite home for. I'm really not a member of the Adam Waffen division, but I actually am. So I mean, Parler is a right-wing social media site that pretends like it wants to be like Twitter or Facebook or something in between, or Vote. For those of you who aren't familiar with, that's VOAT, which was again tried to be another semi-conservative replacement for another major social media platform, Reddit. All of which have failed horribly. But Parler,
there's not enough of a market to populate these networks, that the silent majority is apparently not signing up in droves.
I mean, I saw one of the worst tweets today. It was by this conservative guy. He's like, I'm so disappointed. I could have had a hotter wife, but they're all so liberal.
Oh, poor guy.
And I'm just like, first of all, you're implying that you currently have a wife, and if she ever sees this tweet, her divorce attorney is literally going to get the world's biggest hard-on. Like, it'll be seen from space.
I mean,
but wow. I'm just shocked by like the stupidity of these guys. Bringing this kind of into our main theme for tonight, war on women. It is a common thing that I hear women say, is they've learned that if it says not interested in politics or politically moderate, what they actually mean is Trump.
Yeah.
Right. Unless someone says explicitly, no, fuck Cheeto Benito, the Mango Mussolini.
My favorites are the ones that say Trumpers just go ahead and swipe left or something like that. Like that stuff.
Right. No, I mean it's glorious. But so
I think
anyway,
I've seen like a top 10. Somebody did like a top 10 gallery of like
the funniest
dating profiles.
I saw another great one the other day. But anyway, back to the point. So Musk and Kanye West are now going to go in together to buy Parler, and this is after Kanye has made his series of mentally unhinged anti-Semitic statements the other day about how, after he made anti-Semitic statements and the U.S. Holocaust Museum invited him to come to the U.S. Holocaust Museum, he demanded that they come to Planned Parenthood to see their Holocaust, like his Holocaust Museum. I'm just like, that's not accurate at all. That doesn't. I mean, first
of all, I gotta throw a little shade at them. What kind of fucking dumbass invites him to anything that is based on a sensitive topic. Like,
I mean, well, no, that is the U.S. Holocaust Museum. They when any major public figure makes any sort of anti-Semitic statement, their standard reaction is to invite, because the people expect them to comment. Their standard reaction is to invite that person to come to the U.S. Holocaust Museum, and I think they're trying to be constructive about the engagement, and I appreciate them for that.
There's a limit, though. I mean, you just have to have a bucket that you drop certain people, like Kanye, or I'm sorry, Ye. You know, you got to drop Ye in the bucket. Ye goes in the nay bucket for any kind of public appearance that requires any kind of decorum whatsoever. They got to start drawing a line. We don't live in the times when you can have a constructive visit to help someone understand anything anymore. That does not work with the right / their nutty fans like him, because he's not really right, left, or anything. He's just him. He's just his fucked up little fucking universe.
I mean, it is a thing that he's not operating on all 6 cylinders. Obviously, he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic, a few cards short of a deck. It's very obvious that the man is not all there. Between and lots of people have pointed to lots of other things, like, oh, his mother died, oh, Kim Kardashian left him,
okay,
all these other things. I honestly look at him as being one of those things of, he's risen to the level of his mediocrity.
Yeah,
and he's now, just like Trump, and I think this is one of the reasons why Kanye and Trump are very much alike, is that they both exist in a realm where their salve for their lack of bottom is to simply keep on getting more media attention. That's what they're about. That's what this is about. And when he says outrageous things, it's because he knows that he gets the attention that he actually craves from those outrageous things. And I mean, he will go down the Tila Tequila route of after she had, for those of you who don't know the story of Tila Tequila was a reality TV personality who was famous for being very hot, and there was a show about her trying, like, men and women, because she's bisexual, or was, I don't know if she still is. I mean, it was all kind of it was all kind of up in the air because she just got attention, and like there was a whole reality show about people trying to hook up with her, and both men and women, and MTV was considered very forward for this, and a lot of people were like, so you're basically doing audition, like you're basically doing the backroom casting couch, except like PG-14 version. Is what's going on here. Anyway, she ended up a couple of things happened. A lot of people have tried to blame like her having a major head injury for her change in behavior, but she is now a Vietnamese American Nazi, right? Like an avowed Nazi. But I mean, it's the same thing. Like
that's like half of all the 31 flavors in one little crazy cone,
right?
That's amazing.
I mean, but you ask why she's doing it, and she's doing it for the attention. And again, all these things that Trump is doing right now is for the attention. Right. And Kanye, I think, craves the attention.
Stay in the headline.
And Musk does too, which is why they're teaming up. And I also think it signals one other thing, which is that I think Musk is admitting that his Twitter buyout is going to fail. They are going to sue him. They are going to sue the pants off him, because he screwed this up that badly. I think his lawyers have properly advised him, your plan has gone to shit because you were going to buy it, and then you turned around and you shit the bed. You shit the bed hard. Like you ate everything on the Taco Bell menu twice.
Oh God.
And then
hung upside down. And, I have an idea for a reality show, David. I think we should just launch Musk and Ye into orbit with a hidden camera and just watch. Just let them like be in a capsule for an extended period of time together.
I mean, you wouldn't get past episode like 6 before it was like, and today on cannibalism in space.
Right. This is now the third consecutive episode where we can't really see through the blood on the lens, but we're coming to you live. Well, speaking of 15 minutes of fame, that's about how long Truss lasted as the prime minister. Which I have to point out,
I called it.
Totally called that one.
I called it, and here's the thing: I'm going to call it.
I asked David, so what about Truss, who just showed up? Does she last through this experience? He's like, nope. Hell no, she doesn't last.
No, she doesn't last. And here's the thing: I don't think there are two scenarios in front of the British Conservative Party right now, also known as the Tories. So if you hear me call them by different names, that's why. The Conservatives or the Tories are the name of the party. There's two options in front of them. I think they're going to try the bad option first, and they're going to end up having to take and they're going to have to end up taking an even bigger hit when they have to take the good the good option second. The bad option is they play this game again, where they go back to the Tory party membership, and without going back to the voters, they go back to the Tory party membership and they try and appoint a new prime minister. Boris Johnson has thrown his hat in the ring again. I don't think Boris Johnson will get it. Sunak, who went up against Truss, he was the runner-up. I think maybe he'll get it, simply because I don't think. I mean, if they do go this route, simply because I think the Tories can't stomach Boris again, and I think if they try to put that in front of the membership again, they'll balk. So I think that the Tories will see putting a conservative Indian in front of the party as a net plus. Overall, it shows that they're inclusive, they're not anti-immigrant, they're not all these other things. I don't think it'll work, and here's why. The net unfavorables for every leading major Tory is above 40%. The net favorables for every single leading Tory is at most 24%. So you have, for every one person who thinks that having this person be prime minister is a good idea, you have at least two who think this is a terrible idea. I think the Tories aren't admitting what has to happen. So the way British politics works is, unlike the U.S., the head of government is appointed by the party or coalition that has the most votes in Parliament. So basically, their president, the prime minister, is elected by the legislature. When a prime minister steps down, again, that majority has an opportunity to appoint their replacement without having to have another election. That's how British politics works. There's a hazard in this, however, because a lot of people, because that when you elect your Conservative or Labour or Liberal Democrat or Scottish National Party or Plaid Cymru or any of the other parties that are in Sinn Féin, any of the other parties that are in British Parliament, you expect them to vote a certain way for prime minister. That the party that is leading, one of the two major parties, or each party actually, has someone in mind for who they would like to be prime minister. And when you vote for that person, you understand that that person is going to vote for a particular person to be prime minister. This is one of the reasons why the Tories, I think why the Tories are failing right now. Because Boris Johnson, for all his faults and for all his stupidity, when he was in office, he had a popular mandate. People went to the polls and voted for the British Conservative Party, knowing that Boris Johnson was going to be prime minister. No one voted for the Conservatives thinking that Liz Truss was going to be prime minister, or Sunak was going to be prime minister, or any of this, right? And now that Boris Johnson has disgraced himself repeatedly, I don't see a good way for them to avoid calling a general election. Now here's the catch.
General election, that would be for the body.
Right. So here's the catch. Any prime minister in UK politics can at any time say, you know what? I want to call a general election. I think this occurs anytime there's there's instability in Parliament and at regular intervals. Parliament has to stand for election every 5 years or so, but you can call a general election anytime you want. And the problem is the Tories are looking at the polls right now. If they call the general election right now, they would get crushed. Absolutely crushed. And the Labour Party would come to power. This is why I think that their smarter move right now is to call a general election. Really? Because here's
why.
The smart move is to call a general election. Because they can't put another person up who's going to be popular. What they can do, however, is saddle a Labour prime minister with a pound that's worth nothing, all the downsides of Brexit, which is part of why Truss is having to resign, because she can't fix any of these problems because the Tories don't want to admit that they made a massive mistake in Brexit.
She can't
and they don't want to deal with the problems
that her people created.
Right? Inflation, an oncoming recession, a continuing war in Ukraine, all these other issues. And also, of course, the fuel crisis that is continuing in Northern Europe as winter comes in. If the Conservatives were smart, they would go ahead and call a general election right now and throw that all in the lap of a Labour government. They're not smart. They're going to try
Republican tactic. Let's just wreck the place and then hand it off to a Democrat and blame.
Right? That's what they should do right now. Yeah. That's what they should do. But they're not smart. They're going to try and put another prime minister up, and it's not going to work. I mean, Liz Truss was basically dealt, a hand with, a two of clubs and, a six of diamonds, and told that she had to play on that hand. No, I'm not going to build. I can't build it straight. I can't build
really got her own problems. That's not really an excuse. She's got her own issues. My favorite.
Oh no, she made a stupid decision when she said she was going to cut taxes on the rich, and not cut expenses. And on top, and the British market responded, which was to crush the value of the pound. And for those of you who aren't aware, traditionally, the pound sterling, the currency of the United Kingdom, is worth about $2 to $2.50 per pound sterling. Mm-hmm. Right? It's now at several points dipped below the value of $1. That means that it's lost more than 200% of its value. Now, here's the thing. If the United Kingdom were a net exporter of things, that could actually be good. That could make their exports a lot more attractive. But the problem is the United Kingdom is a net importer of food, a net importer of energy, a net importer of most finished consumer goods, which means all of those are now 200% more expensive.
Yeah, y'all think you got some inflation problems over here. So that'll be fun to watch. I still think she was a goofball already on her own. I mean, I love how John Oliver compared her to some student that knew that they had said what they had learned to say, and then they looked way too happy about it, because there's so many times when she would say something, she'd be like, I got it right. I don't think that she was doing them any favors on the world stage at all. So that's
no, she's an idiot.
Tell us about the Moonies, David. Our next hot take is one that's very, very not in my wheelhouse. So this is one. When you say Moonies, I automatically started thinking about Weebs and Sailor Moon fans. But share with the world, which is close to the right vicinity.
Right? So again, we're kind of doing a around the world moment here. But I mean, this is kind of a big deal in East Asia. So the Unification Church, also known as the Moonies, and for those of you who don't know the nickname, the Reverend Moon a South Korean self-proclaimed successor to Christ.
That always works out.
Right? Founded the Unification Church in South Korea. It has a decent following in South Korea, especially in the 60s and 70s. People began to call them Moonies because they would be at airports selling flowers, right? And doing this sort of thing, right? Yeah. They're mostly famous for they got powerful in South Korea because they appealed to a lot of poor people because they would help poor people do these what are called mass marriages, right? So because weddings were so expensive in South Korea, they would basically say, "Oh, well, we can pool all our resources and we can put on a big wedding for multiple couples to get married." I
mean,
and that
reasonable.
And then through that and their popularity at the time, the South Korean dictatorship suddenly realized that they could be a very helpful ally. And then all of a sudden, the Moonies also became a very virulent anti-communist organization. In the course of their anti-communism, also, they turned to several business ventures to fund their efforts. And then it just kept on growing. So basically think like kind of softer Scientology. There's not quite so much the child abduction and forced abortions kind of thing. No one believes that you're returning to the sea sort of thing. But so as the Moonies have expanded, they have also expanded obviously into Japan. A few months ago, you all may have noticed, the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, was assassinated publicly on the podium. The guy who assassinated him said he did so because of Shinzo Abe's connection to the Moonies. And the reason he was mad at the Moonies is because his mother had donated to the Moonies to the tune of $600,000. She'd gone into debt, basically destroyed this guy's life with her donating everything she owned to the Moonies. And apparently this has become a common thing as the Moonies have continued to expand in Japan. The Moonies have made a point of reaching into the ruling Liberal Democratic Party in Japan. And for those of you who might be confused, the Liberal Democratic Party is actually the conservative party in Japan.
Because of course it is.
Right. So the Democratic Party, just like here, is the more liberal party in Japan. But the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan has become synonymous with connections with the Unification Church. And after, surprisingly, and this is a weird thing about Japanese politics, when someone kills a popular or a well-known politician in Japan, and they say they do so for a reason, strangely enough, in Japanese politics, they take a look at the reason, and very strangely, in a strange sort of symmetry, have this tendency to kind of come down on the side of the assassin. This has happened multiple times, and every single time they're like, that guy wasn't entirely wrong. So now the Liberal Democratic Party is taking a moment to purge their ranks of any association with the Unification Church. Now, the reason this is a big deal in Japanese politics is, again, the Unification Church has a lot of economic ties into politics and into little things. Like, your corner store may be owned by the Unification Church. Your insurance agency may be owned by the Unification Church. And now with them being cut off from politics, it really does shake up or has the potential to shake up the regulatory landscape of Japan, as the LDP might not refrain as much from reaching down and touching some of these organizations, because before they were like, oh, well, those are our buddies, the guys who donate the Unification Church. Right. Now it's sort of been like, you're not on my Christmas card list anymore.
Well, to bring it back home, from a very odd source, one of the legal challenges to Biden's student loan forgiveness plan has been slapped down, and that extremely unlikely source is Justice Barrett, which I find to be amazing, because I would have had her to have it out for anything progressive. And this just dropped like right before we went on, so we still don't have all the details. But Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett rejected a challenge to the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness program, declining to take up an appeal brought by a Wisconsin taxpayers group.
Yeah, because there's no standing.
It's interesting that she's got a sliver, a little.
Well, no, the thing is, this is well established.
Pride.
It's well established a point of justice, what's called justiciability, which is, in other words, the power of the court to hear the case.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have to bring a case is what's called standing. In other words, you have to show that you were directly impacted by something. So if I sue, like for instance, if I were to sue my neighbor for throwing shit onto my lawn, right?
Right.
I have standing. Something was done directly to me. I cannot sue my neighbor for them throwing shit onto someone else's lawn.
Right.
Right? Because nothing happened to me.
And I don't know the details, like what the argument that they were making was supposed to be. I can only imagine a whole bunch of zero-sum right-wing horse shit about, how they're ultimately not getting a break, but all these other people are getting a free ride or some bullshit. Some bullshit that we've already heard before on this student.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's bullshit.
I hope a lot of these other challenges can go the same extinction route, but we'll of course have to wait and see. Well, that is it for the hot takes, ladies and gentlemen. That means we're to the part of the show where we talk about the beer. And David will kick us off with our segment that we lovingly refer to as "What You Drinking." So, sir, where are you starting this evening in your brews of choice?
So, tonight I'm starting with a late entry to Oktoberfest, which is this Prost House from Harding House Brewing. And
that's right over in my old neck of the woods.
Right? I normally would not do another Oktoberfest after we already did our Oktoberfest, but Harding House rarely distributes. It is not a thing that they are known for doing. They are a very small brewery. They do a lot of very small things. They distribute to grocery stores, but they are not big on handing out their kegs willy-nilly. You have to really cajole them and massage them and give them
a reach around.
Yeah, pretty much. I was going to go for something sexual there, and you did it for me.
Well, yeah, I can always be counted on to drag us right into the gutter. You know this.
Right. I mean, there's going to be some salad tossing involved in this, okay?
Absolutely. So you picked it up at Red?
So I managed to pick this up at Red Spirits. The
funny part is the brewery and the store are only separated by something like 5 miles, 10 miles. Like
right.
They're on the same.
Well, no, when I worked at ML Rose, like literally Harding House I could throw a rock hard enough at Harding House, and we couldn't even get their beers because they'd be like, I don't know if it's the right environment for me to present my beers. I mean, they're very, very, very picky about who gets to buy kegs of their beer.
And once upon a time, we did a very sunset blinded, hyper exposed live broadcast of this show from Harding House one evening.
We got real drunk that night. I remember.
I forgot when that was, and I forgot exactly what time it was, but it was. Oh boy, there's some sunlight coming in those windows when the sun goes down. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no, we had a tough time when we got real drunk that night. That was a lot of fun.
Well, we stayed after, and
yeah, we stayed well after. we just kept on drinking for like hours.
Basically, we shut the place down once we wrapped the show.
Yeah,
they were really great people. The owner is one of the most infectiously giddy about his business and his beer people that I've ever met in the beer business. So anyway, tell us about this Oktoberfest that you're dragging out here at almost Halloween.
So I gotta say, as Oktoberfest go, here's the thing about Harding House, and this is one of the things I appreciate about all their beers. They don't go for flash.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go for, I added cardamom or like some other like random ingredient to like flavor the beer. They don't try and be like, oh, I like, they don't play around with anything. When they take a basic style, they say, listen, I'm going to follow the recipe and I'm going to try and make this the best I can and under those rules, right? I need to perfect what I'm doing. And there's a lot of breweries, one of the jokes about Berliner Weiss in America is that if you go get a Berliner Weiss in Germany, it doesn't taste like anything you would have in America because it tastes more like a light hoppy beer in Germany. But in America, it always tastes fruited. And there's a reason for that. It's because we fucked it up. We fucked it up badly. And in the course of trying to save it from being that fucked up, we're like, okay, how can I cover up the fucked upness? I know I can throw in a bunch of fruit flavor and it will cover up how badly I fucked this up. Right? That's why American Berliner Weiss is always fruity and German Berliner Weiss is more Pilsnery. It's somewhere between a Marzen and a Pilsner is what Berliner Weiss ends up with in Germany. So to make a proper German beer takes effort and it takes time. And I've had fest beer from other breweries where they screwed it up. But I mean, it tastes, most people don't know the difference. They don't know what Marzen is supposed to taste like. And so they're just like, yeah, it's basically a lager. Marzen is not a lager. And what I appreciate about this is that there's nothing fancy about this, right? There's nothing about this that says it's just good Marzen. This is a solid, just good all-around Marzen. The maltiness is on point. The hops are on point. They're subdued under the malt. So when I take a sip, I'm greeted with a big malt flavor, a short, sharp hop bite, and then a caramel kind of bready finish.
Yeah.
It's in typical Harding House fashion. They have done a beer which is just what it's supposed to be and is good. And that to me is the hallmark.
Kids call that understood the assignment.
Right. I mean, that to me is the hallmark of a great brewery is when you take a simple style like, hey, I'm going to make a Marzen. I'm not going to do anything fancy with it. I'm just going to make a straight Marzen and do the best job I can at it. And that to me is the hallmark of a brewmaster who is conscious and good at what they're doing and a brewery which is conscious and good about the art of brewing. Because when you can do that, then you're on point. And this is an on point Marzen. And again, I had to get it because it was Harding House and it was someplace not Harding House. I didn't have to drive to Harding House to get my growler filled. So I was like, well, I got to try it now.
And everything you just described is pretty much verbatim what everyone else has had to say in the reviews on Untapped. And it looks like it's pretty well received. It's also, it's a 5%, so it's right in the middle. And
yeah. It's exactly what a Marzen should be. I mean, this to me, if you took this to Oktoberfest, I think that this should be if Harding House wanted to like randomly show up in Munich at Oktoberfest with a keg of this, I feel like this should be a contender in Oktoberfest. I mean, that's how solid it is. This is what a Marzen's supposed to be.
Nice. Well, I'm because of my throat and nose challenges that I've been experiencing for a couple of days, I decided that I would, ironically, for the night that we do the War on Women, I'm going to make man-mosas. So I've been sipping on my first man-mosa, which is using the other can of the beer I brought in last week, the Trek Light. I made fun of light beer as a category and talked about the basic ass, just bullshit nature of it. And that if you had to pick a light beer, Trek Light was a good option because it at least had some craft to it. But for me, those beers are better thrown on some cooking meat or mixed into some kind of beer cocktail. So that was why I decided that one's coming out of the fridge and going into my Man Mosa. And I've actually made it way down through the glass while we've been talking. But I wanted to be able to compare two different beers that were a little more basic for me, not really my usual cup of tea, but put into this context to see how they would do. I'll be able to let you know how that compares in the second break. But for now, I do like that this is taking a back seat to the OJ, to the citrus. And it's a nice, soothing, chilled out experience given my sinus status. I can say it's not quite rich enough for me to want it for breakfast. I'm a big fan of a Man Mosa with some breakfast food, savory breakfast food.
Yeah.
But I like it to have a little more
hungover breakfast food.
Yeah, or just real breakfast, not a sugary breakfast, but like some eggs and some meat and some biscuits. And I do prefer to make like an amber the star of the show in that case, because it gives a little bit more something to it. There's a little more to chew on, so to speak. Like this light gets lost in the OJ really well, which is not a good thing for what I'm normally looking for in the morning. But sitting here sipping it at night, it goes down easy. It's just nice and refreshing.
You're making beer. You're making beer screwdrivers. Is what you're saying.
Yes. At this end of the day, I call it a beer screwdriver. That is 100% correct. So that's where I'm at tonight, taking it kind of easy, laid back on the beer end of things. So anyway, it's time to talk about the first big draw for our discussion this evening. And with that, first of all, if you're here, feel free to say hi. We've seen a couple of other people drop in. Don't hesitate to say hello. Let us know you're here. I'm going to introduce this topic, which is related to the upcoming election, and I'm trying to lift a little bit from James Carville here. It's the greed, stupid. I've been hearing a lot of news, and we'll talk a little bit more about it from different places about the kind of the tug of war between essentially taking your eye off the ball. People are entertaining, financial topics when we've got really important shit, which we will be talking about in the big topic of the evening, to focus on. My opinion on that is that, the state of the economy and the market and finances and inflation and all that shit, that's temporary. But losing your democracy or control of your own uterus are long-term fucking problems. So when you're trying to look at the causes of all this, there's really greed at the core. And one of mine and David's favorite members of Congress is Porter. And she brings these charts that just own every single point and every single person in the room. And recently, she brought some charts that show you a little bit of an insight as to where the real meat of inflation is coming from. So I'm going to play this it's a little over a minute clip of her explanation, so you can all get the picture, and there are even captions, so you can read along in case you get lost. This is a clip that I couldn't find on her official stuff, so we borrowed it from the Young Turks, who we do very much like. But they were the ones that we were able to snag this footage from. So let's take a listen in real quick with Porter for her explanation, get you some edumacation.
According to this chart, what is the biggest driver of inflation during the pandemic? The blue is the dark blue is the recent period.
It would be corporate profits.
And what is that percentage?
It is 54%, and that number does stay that level of high if you update that number to more recent numbers as well.
So over half of the increased prices people are paying are coming from increases in corporate profits.
Yes, the unit price index is reflected in corporate profits as opposed to other costs.
And how does that compare to historically to other periods of inflation or over other periods of economic time?
As reflected there and in other analysis, it is significantly higher in this recovery, 11.5%.
And what is it today?
53%.
So I want to make sure everyone in America understands this chart. What is a unit labor cost?
The cost, wages and associated work costs.
So we could just wages. What is a non-labor input cost?
A variety of things, including maintenance and investments.
Okay, so I have to buy the stuff to make the widget. I have to have a factory. I have to keep the lights on. I have to hire someone to make the widget. That's this stuff. And this is what I add on top.
It's the greed, stupid. It is not the other factors. We are being gouged. We have the stubby chode of corporate America shoved in all of its 3-inch girth, and I mean length girth, right up our asses. And that's what we're eating right now is their greed. And I really appreciated that she put this right out there for everybody, because that's the place that we need to be focused. We need to be this is not a blame Biden scenario. This is not even much as I want to blame Putin, this is not just a blame Putin scenario. This is a bunch of assholes looking at a scenario and going, oh.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, every CEO who goes in front of their investors, who went in front of their investors for the first quarter and the second quarter, have basically said, "Oh no, we're fine from inflation. Our profits are well up."
Yeah.
Right. If you go to the oil industry, profits are well up. If you go to any industry, even the restaurant industry, right, profits are well up. Profits keep on growing, and the challenge, this is what I've kept on saying, which is that inflation is not being driven by wages at all, because wages are not keeping up with standard goods.
I accidentally slipped the GQP War on Women title in there. The greed was the one that I was supposed to hit. It's the greed. I got so angry that I hit the wrong button. Although, Brian, we saw you. Say hi. Thanks for stopping in.
Hi, Brian.
If you're here, say hello. Brian is probably going to contribute to our next break if he's on his normal cycle. He says his schedule's a little off, but I bet he's already ready to go. So anyway, yeah, like it's count on American capitalist fucking pig shit to inspire people to say, hey, here's a financial crisis. We've got lots of problems. Let me just slap on a whole bunch of hyperinflated profit margins and make shit worse because I can make a whole bunch of money. Greed, greed, greed right now. And it's almost part of that very cynical, nihilistic shit that these bastards just live and wallow in. Like, they're always on the take, because as far as their little tiny paranoid fucked up minds are concerned, tomorrow it could all go south. All of us takers will somehow succeed in taking away their fortunes, and they'll need their ridiculous boards.
I don't think that's it at all. That's not it at all.
Kelly's here. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. I don't think that's it at all. I think
it's part of their nihilistic worldview of like, I got to get as much as I can right now, even if it's way too much and I'll never use it in one lifetime.
Well, the thing is, you assume it's nihilism. I don't think it's nihilism. I look at this as my goal, my game is to simply continue to acquire more. And again, I think part of this is you have a lot of investors who've lost their shirt, who are continuing to lose their shirts off of increased market volatility. And what, it's one of those things of, it used to be that you'd go to the bank like 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. You'd go to the bank, you'd ask for a loan for your business, you'd show them a business plan. The bank would evaluate your business plan and give you a loan. And they'd be like, okay, so the first 2 years you don't pay on the loan. And then this next, 10 years, we're going to charge you about 10 to 15% on the loan, right? And we're going to charge that for about the next 20 years or 15 years, right? To repay on the loan. Now the system is the angel investor, and then you can, once the angel investor is invested in you, then you can go to the bank. But the problem is what does the angel investor expect as a return for their $100,000, $1 million, $500,000, whatever they put in? They expect 5 times, so 500% return in 5 years.
which is just ridiculous. I mean,
that doesn't make sense.
Nobody wants to play the long game anymore. It doesn't seem like we have any patience in any
the
level.
fact that they saw what happened was, and I would argue what happened was in the 1980s, they saw deregulation and then they saw all these dollar signs pop up, right? I showed up with $10,000 to it's a fictional example, but Cardiff Electric, for those of you who have ever watched Halt and Catch Fire on AMC. I showed up with $10,000 to Cardiff Electric and I walked away with $5 million, right? And they saw that and they said, why didn't I do that? Okay, wooden horse toy company.
Right.
I'm going to give you $10,000 and you need to give me $50,000 back in 5 years.
Of
course, Wooden Horse Toy Company would come back and say, hello, what?
Right. Yeah.
And then they'd say, fine, I'm just going to buy you out and then, sell you off to some other schmuck for $5 million, right? I'll pay $1 million. I'll pay $1 million to buy you out right now. Well, okay, I'll sell you my company for $1 million. And then they go in, they fire all the employees, they sell off all the equipment, and then they sell the intellectual property rights and whatever land the factory was on for $5 million to some other schmuck who thinks they're going to turn around and do it again. The problem is that we've hit a ceiling in the ability to take worthless assets and turn them around and sell them to someone else for even more money. The rich have been playing this game now for about 25, 30 years of buying worthless assets. Like, for instance, Sealy mattresses, by all rights, should have shut down 30 years ago. They should have. Why? Because they made a lot of bad investments. And when they did, they racked up a lot of debt. And then Cock Industries, I refuse to call them by the proper name, came in and bought them. And then what Cock Industries did to them was they loaded them up with even more debt, right? Hid as much of the debt as they could, and then sold it to another investment company. Right? That's what they did to Sealy. Now Sealy still exists as a company.
This seems to overlap my theory of being the man. I get to evoke this theory once in a while, and I really enjoy it. I almost had a chance to drop it in on the city commission meeting this past Tuesday. So Lucas's theory of being the man is that not everybody can be the man. That somebody has to work for somebody. Somebody has to just be regular. Not everyone can be the top dog, the big idea millionaire. And when you say stuff like, oh, well, I saw them make all this money by investing in this thing, I should go invest in a thing and make all this money. It doesn't work because not every idea is good and not everybody deserves to be the man. Somebody has to work for somebody. Sometimes you don't get to be that lucky son of a bitch Forrest Gump fucking invested in a fruit company person. Not everybody gets that lucky. And it was always supposed to be a combination of brilliant one-off ideas and luck. That's what capitalism kind of did. Instead of this, I'm going to go out and make an investment return that way, which is just, I mean, you're getting into a whole bunch of disgusting shit that my profession wrestles with, like the value of a brand, and they blend all this fucking bullshit in there when they're doing these things, these reselling and unloading debt. And it's garbage. It's not the roots of America or capitalism. It's something different. It's a greedables. It's just nasty.
And I want to point this out. So I am a regular reader of a really interesting subreddit called Wall Street Bets. And they're actually the subject of a really cool documentary right now.
Yep.
About what happened with the GameStop stock.
Yeah.
And how that played out. But one of the things that a lot of people in that subreddit have learned, because and it's one of my constant complaints about everyone's favorite big investor, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett creates his own market, right? Warren Buffett says buy a stock, and a bunch of day traders and even some hedge fund managers run and buy that stock. Now, what they don't seem to understand is Warren Buffett already has a big fistful of that stock. And as soon as they start buying that stock, what does Warren Buffett do with that stock he has a big fistful of? Sells it. Because he bought that stock at, let's call it $50 a share, and now it's up to $100 a share, and now he can sell it. Right? Now he's just made 100% profit on his investment.
It's a self-fulfilling financial prophecy.
Exactly. And what, one of the things that has happened to a lot of people who have been on this Wall Street Bet subreddit is a lot of them kept on being told, well, hold the bag, hold the bag, hold the bag, which means hold on to the stock for GameStop. And while they were holding on to the bag, they were kind of propping up the price. Meanwhile, a lot of the leaders of Wall Street Bets made a killing, right? Selling off their shares of GameStop. They created their own little Warren Buffett collective. It's one of the reasons why it's kind of a sad thing to watch now in GameStop, and it's one of the things of how this market works. Right? Is you pump up something that has no value. Right? GameStop does not have the sales to justify its stock price.
Right.
GameStop did not have the sales. I mean, GameStop knows that it's going to crash. That's why, for those of you who don't understand the stock market, they split 2 for 1 the other day to try and, bring down their stock price in preparation for them being bought out. Right, they're looking for a buyer, so they split their stock. What's called a split for 2 for 1, which is they take a stock and they say, all right, if you have 1 share of stock, now you have 2 shares. So the value of each share has decreased by 50%.
Right,
and they know what they're doing. And this is how this market is working, which is it's hyper predatory capitalism, writ large. And every single day we keep at this. I mean, the whole thing, even the arguments about quiet quitting, you have companies looking for a way to devalue themselves, looking for a buyer, saying like, oh, well, our productivity has gone down 50% since the pandemic, et cetera. But okay, but how many, what was the, and I love using this formula, what was the value, what was the value of the labor added? It's a Marxist formula. It's really easy to work out.
You said Marxist,
right? No, it is a formula from Karl Marx, and it's a really easy formula to work out. What is the added value of the labor from what these people were already producing? Holy shit! Especially from American labor, it's like this is a ridiculous amount of return for every hour of labor that you're paying for.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm paying for $20 an hour, I'm usually getting about $100 of value from that person per hour. So I mean, this is, and it's a self-crushing scenario. Is one of my big things. Is
I have
and it's one of the things.
Certain old boss that I know for a fact would never have wanted to perform that equation.
Well, no, I mean, the thing that's just shocking about all this is you have to hit a point, because when you are, as an investor, demanding a 5% return every year on your stock investment, in other words, the value of the stock has to go up 5% every year, or I've got to sell it.
Yeah, right.
How?
Yeah.
No company can grow at 5% every year. That's impossible. No economy. China this week, which is long, and everyone has known that the numbers have been doctored for 2 decades, right? Has long touted that, oh, we get 8% growth in GDP every year, which is a ridiculous rate of growth. And this year they've said, we are not giving anyone our GDP. They also didn't give anyone their GDP last year. They are not telling anyone what their gross domestic product is and what the rise in it was, because it's under 8%. And there's no way they can massage the numbers to get 8%.
Right.
Because no economy can continue. Imagine that. Like think about it like compounding interest, right? So you put $5 in the bank, and they tell you, well, we're going to give you 5% return every single year, right? So you leave that $5 in for, let's call it 100 years. And every year it gains 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%. Let me actually do the math right here real fast.
I was going to ask you. I hope you know where this works out.
Yeah, I'm going to see what that works out to.
Yeah, I don't have enough math to do that as quickly as you're about to. I just know it's a lot.
Neither can I. I'm terrible at math. Let's call it $5. 0.
I'm going to throw this slide up while you do that, because this is the bottom line for people to take away from this, is that when you're talking to people in the next few weeks and they talk about, well, I just don't know about the Democrats, I can't trust them on the economy with all this inflation, you get to remind them that corporate profits are accounting for 53 and change % of the growth in price.
Yeah.
So it's not the labor, it's not the oil. Those are contributors. But if you look at how upside down
it's the 20%. It's their need for 20% profit off of everything. And so I did the math. It's $557.51 after 100 years, which doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah, but on $5.
On $5. So let's do this on
you start adding zeros to that. If it were $5,000,
let's do this at $500,000. $65,750,628.92.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And these people aren't chucking in 500. And just to point out, the real problem children on this, I'm not chucking in $500,000. They're chucking in $5 million.
Right.
They're not putting anything else in. Let's call it 20 years. What does 5 million get you at? Again, just a 5%. And 5% is a little low, right? These people are now looking at with the current treasury bond rate of at least, let's call it 10%. So in 20 years, at 10% with your $5 million, you would have $336,374,997.47. That's what so in other words, in the average lifespan of a company, let's be honest. You start a company. Let's say you really take off and you get $5 million in investment under a relatively benign return rate. You would owe them $336 million for that $5 million.
So essentially, what we're looking at when we look at this from an election standpoint, the question is, when your friends and family talk to you about this and you drop that 53% thing on them, the question is, who's going to do a better job regulating that kind of greed back to where it should be? And we all know historically it's not Republicans. And that's why, for me, the inflation problem, and of course it's no better. Honestly, I'd be less pissed off if I could just blame it all on Russia when I'm at the gas tank or gas pump. It would piss me off less if I could just blame Putin. But of course, we have the sense to blame Putin and not Biden.
It's greed.
Global phenomenon is not the U.S. president's doing.
It's the people wanting to say, "Hey, I'm just like Warren Buffett. I can make all the money too." And it's the thing is, the sad part about it is that some of this is not big institutional investors. Some of this is hedge fund managers sloshing money around. And this is one of the things I always point out about one of my problems with how bad capitalism works is I always compare it to a big pot of water, right? And income inequality lowers the level of water. but income inequality, but or pardon me, lack of income inequality lowers the level of water. The more income gets unequal, the more the water level rises. And let's say I have the pot of water and I start sloshing it around. So if income inequality is low, it's down in the bottom of the pot. You have these big institutional investors, and it's all contained within the pot, right? I'm sloshing the water around and it's all inside the pot. But as income inequality rises, right, as the rich get so much richer than the average person inside America, then the water level rises. And now when I slosh the pot, right, we move it back and forth, it's shaking the pot, right? It's becoming increasingly unstable. And this is one of the reasons why we went from 2001 and a big crash, right? Which honestly, if we're being 100% honest, beyond the simple destruction of the World Trade Center and the damage done to downtown Manhattan, there was no major damage done to the United States infrastructure. There was no major damage done to rail lines, airports.
There was really no reason for panic and collapse other than panic.
Right. And so you had a bunch of people
and false predictions.
You had a bunch of people walk through with a cart and say, throw your bad investments in here. We're going to back them with a bunch of really cheap debt. And then we hit 08, right? And then we have another major crash. And now we're 10 years out from 08, and we're about to have another major crash, right? 12 years out from 08. What? 14. Pardon me. 14 years.
The cycle is generally sticking.
But I mean, the thing is, the crashes are getting ready to happen more frequently. And the reason they're happening more frequently is, again, there's too much water in the pot. And every time you slosh it, right, now the waves get bigger. Now the splashing gets more. And every time, and it's one of the aspects that I don't like about our current economy is it's become these boutique stocks, right? Uber doesn't give any returns to its investors other than raising its stock price. It doesn't make a profit, right? But people who buy Uber stock can feel relatively assured that when they buy Uber stock will continue to rise, and they'll be able to make a profit and sell it later. Tesla right now is having an odd time, which its stock is becoming volatile because Musk again has it as collateral for his buyout of Twitter, which again isn't going to happen. But so you have people buying and selling it and increasing levels of volatility. And the more this goes on, the riskier and worse the economy becomes. And the more unequal it becomes, because the people who have money, right, can afford to buy large amounts of this stock at what's called the dip when it's cheap.
Well, they can afford to fuck up. They can afford to take a hit.
Right. Well, not only
can afford to take a hit.
Not only can they afford to take the hit, but the thing is, one of the reasons it makes it more volatile is they can afford to do what's called buy the dip, right? Buy when it's cheap. And by the act of buying it, create a market where the price goes up and then sell it at the profit. At which point, once they sell it, the price goes back down. And now all of a sudden, the market starts to go up and down. Investments start to go up and down. Interest rates have to go up to account for the increased instability. And the only people who are really hurt by this are the poor. Right. I can't buy a house. I can't buy a car. I can't take a personal loan to pay for my non-existent health care. Right. Yeah. And it creates a cyclone that continues to hurt the economy. And it's time for us to finally start to realize that the way capitalism is practiced in America is no longer sustainable if we intend to have an economy at all. The greed has to be restrained.
I like Brian's conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory. It just sounds like taking a wild guess at what drives some of these bastards. Get the idea that the big business is stepping on the gas now to give Biden the blame in the general public's eye, and then they'll hit the brakes on exorbitant profits if or when they're GOP buddies. I don't know about that part. I think they won't hit the brakes. They'll just keep getting excused for it or deregulated.
No, I mean, the reason gas is going up is because the Gulf states
I think you meant the proverbial gas, hitting the gas on the blame.
Well, I mean, at that point, I was going to say that the reason the Gulf states are cutting their production and raising the price is because they don't have Trump in office to blatantly bribe anymore. Like when the UAE would for years bought out an entire floor of the Trump hotel. Right? Oh, we just need that as extra guest housing. Thing. That has nothing to do with
an excellent reason for no one currently in any business whatsoever to be able to hold the office of president. It's time for another round, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got anything you haven't cracked open, this is the time. I've already been drinking on mine, similarly to last time, but we'll kick that off right now. So pop them open. I'll just go first on this one since mine's
because it's going to take me a second.
So I did another Man Mosa. For those that are just now joining us, we are doing next our big topic, the war on women, from the GQP. And I thought it would be amusingly ironic to drink Man Mosas during this show, but also because of my throat and nose and slight under the weatherness, getting the OJ in the mix. So this time, and I saved a little sip of it so I could remind folks about it. This is Check to the Head from Dark Horse Brewing, being that hockey season is upon us again, and being that we are once again watching our Preds. Go Preds.
Go Preds.
We can drink the hockey-themed beers. So this is Check to the Head Cream Ale. By itself, when not mimosified, this is a 4.5 easy drinking little cream ale. It's better than a light or a lager, but it's still kind of basic. So I thought it would be ideal for this kind of use. One of the few that I keep on hand or have had on hand. I don't exactly have a lot of.
Not super creamy.
No,
not really creamy. That's sad.
I mean, it's fine, but it's not like.
No. It doesn't have a big vanilla cream flavor to punch it.
Which would make this very orange creamsicle-y if it did. I mean, it does not have really that much.
Oh, I wish you knew. I wish I knew that you were going to do that, because I have a whole batch of me for next week, or not for next week, but the week after. I have a whole batch of Edmund's Oast. One of them, which is the orange creamsicle. Because I want to. I for those of you who don't know my saga with Edmund's Oast, they are they are one of the best artists for beer cans that I've ever seen.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They have terrible beer.
I will say this,
and I want to constantly give them. I constantly want to go back to them and be like, okay, somewhere there has to be like a brewmaster who's inspired by your art to be like, I'm going to make good beer.
Yeah.
And
this
so
is better than the light. This is there's a little more to it. There's a little more there. But they're both kind of the same ballpark on alcohol content. So it's not that's not coming through. There's just something about the cream ale that holds its own a little bit more when diluted by the orange juice. I'm trying to see, this one's 4.5. I think the light was like 4.1 or something. Like they're both very much in the ballpark with each other. 4.0. So 4.5, 4.0, close enough. But yeah, this is a little bit more balanced. Of you can pick this up and say, oh, there's beer in that OJ, where the other one was like, that's just sour OJ. So this one definitely mixes better. I think I'll stick with my ambers as my preferred Man Mosa, or as David explained earlier, in the evening it's just a beer screwdriver. But it is making the throat happy for all this extra talking that we're doing tonight. What you got over there in your glass as we?
So I have my new very favorite beer. I actually had this a few months ago while we were off camera doing our post show,
right?
And I was shocked by how much I liked it. And the reason I was shocked by it was because it's a Japanese beer. And, we're all like, for those of you who are like beer aficionados, we've all had Sapporo, we've all had Kirin, we've all had these rice beers from Japan. And this was radically different. Radically different. And I'm going to show you the label here.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Give you a little zoom action. Yeah. Look at that. I like that.
So this is Hitachino Nest Red Rice Ale. And I qualified it because a lot of people qualify this as a Belgian, not a ale. Right? This tastes like whatever red rice is. This tastes like a complex Belgian. And I want to explain to you a little bit the history of QC Brewery because it's kind of cool.
We should tell Kelly it's okay. Not everybody brings beer to this party.
This is
Icicle,
true.
Diet Coke, and a Marlboro, which is
Um,
easily 1/3 of the time I've ever been around Kelly. That would be the combo.
So one of the things about Kuichi Brewery is up until 1994 in Japan, you could not have a craft brewery. And the reason, and that's why Sapporo and Kirin are such big things, is because you had to produce something like 20,000 barrels of beer a day in order to be a licensed brewer in Japan. They had, the tax system that they had was very complex. A lot of this has been resolved, and Kuichi Brewery is one of the results. There initially, when they took down the law, there were a bunch of people trying to do microbrews in Japan, and most of them were just like, "Oh, we're just going to make another version of Kirin or Sapporo, right?" Because that's what people like. Just in the same way, so many brewers in America keep on making IPAs. Most of those failed. Most of those went out. Kuichi came in after like this craft beer holocaust that happened in like 98 and said, no, we're going to make real good beer. And they have succeeded in a way that is just absolutely amazing. This is by far and away my favorite beer. They asked me when I was so excited when I saw that they had this the other day at Reds. They're like, "Do you want us to order like more cases?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want you to because
that would take away the treat."
Right? It would take away the treat. Like I know you'll order more anyway, and I'll have it every now and then. But this is like my beer mistress, right? It's not my beer wife. Like Bearded Iris, like Homestyle is like my beer wife, right?
Yeah, it is.
I go to the bar all the time, and I'm like, okay, I'll have a Bearded Iris. Or when I go to like Alley Pub down the street, I'm like, okay, I'll have a Yazoo Hop Perfect, right? Those are beer wives. This is my beer mistress, which makes it fun, sexy, and exciting every time I get to drink it. It is this amazingly complex I want to say it's Belgian style.
Is it
What?
Is it in your Stein? Yeah. I love that the color is described on Untapped as smoky pink, and I think
Yeah,
I can get behind that description.
it is a smoky pink, and it is
Complex sake-like flavors. That's interesting.
I would not, maybe it's because all the sake I like is Okinawan. But this I would not qualify as this as sake. Maybe it has a small sake bite at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, if you can find this, I heartily recommend that you grab a bottle of it and make this your beer mistress as well.
Well, good. I'm sure we'll all get right.
But I mean, this has a great complex flavor. It's light. It has a maltiness, a malty finish, which is kind of one of the interesting things about it.
Right.
Is it has a light, sort of again a Belgian-y front end, which is sort of light and weedy, and it finishes with a very smooth, slightly sour malt. It has great carbonation. It's just it's not like Guldendrach or a lot of other Belgians, which are really super carbonated. It's just the right level of carbonation, but it tastes like a really well-rounded Belgian. The one I would compare it to would be like a more malty Westmalle or a more malty St. Bernadotte, maybe. it's such a great all-rounder beer. I mean, again, this is my beer mistress, and I love it so much. And
Awesome.
I'm going to enjoy. I'm enjoying my beer mistress with you all right now.
Well, speaking of beer
A
mistress,
little bit of exhibitionism involved in this.
sometimes when you have a good lineup of beer, you got to have a side piece as well. And that's why we always encourage our buddy Brian to bring his review of his adjacent vices that he often provides for us. So here we are with Brian's recreational messaging of choice. So for this evening's recovery, I was reading this earlier. That's why you saw me laughing for no reason. I was previewing this, reading it, and I was cracking up. I'm smoking Girl Scout cookies at a pace that would alarm Snoop Dogg. It's an ever so wonderful indica with a physical body high. It makes a lackluster and draining day just kind of ebb away. The buds are as tight as can be and very dusty in the good way. 26% THC rating seals the deal. Say it with me. We're gonna have to figure this out. We're gonna have to get him just on screen.
I feel like we need to like just pre-record him and just like like we need to do it like for your health, good, like for your health.
Yeah, right.
On Channel 4, right? That's what we need to do. We need to like just pre-record it and just like throw it on there of like him like high as fuck.
So now it's time for the elephant in the room, so to speak. So David brought this up as a good topic for the night, and it pairs well with the stay on target kind of concept of trying to dissuade people from falling into the recession conversation as some kind of motivating factor. This too will pass when it comes to the economy. But what will not pass is any kind of legislation to protect women's rights to their body autonomy if the Republicans take control. So, for me, there are a variety of reasons that there is a arguable war on women. And, there's always war on Christmas, war on this, war on that. It's a hype phrase, right? But there's a ongoing.
Oh, yeah, that's my bad. Sorry.
David was trying to peace out for a pee break and hit the wrong button.
I did.
So there's an ongoing issue that we've seen with the right and their relationship with women and women's issues. And for me, I'm willing to entertain a lot of the different possibilities, right? And you're going to hear from David about some of these dialed in, but I like the idea, as many say, they just hate women. They just can't deal with women. They don't want women empowered. They don't want women as equals. They don't want women to stop taking up all the slack at home and go to work and all that, right? But there is a percentage that just honest to goodness are stupid enough to really honestly, they do believe that abortion is murder. They just believe it. They know it. They're convicted to that concept. They just know it. And it's definitely driven by the religious fucking culty fucking bullshit. But there is a percentage of people that's what's driving them, that they've decided it's about the babies. Now, they may have been led by the people with the woman hatred to be useful idiots in that regard, but that's a big piece of it. And it's multifold, and disenfranchising anything they can disenfranchise about women just helps these bastards. And it goes back to that zero-sum thing for me a lot. And it goes back to that, if I give women this and give women that, I have to give up my own whatever the fuck, fill in the blank. Oh, it's just never true. Like in America, there is no such thing as if you help someone else or yield to someone else, you have to give up your own. That replacement concept is fucking garbage. But David, this was really the topic that you pushed, and you've got a pretty deep.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got a whole list of
deep
things.
axe to grind here, but you're also the one that worked among these fuckers for a period of time, so you have some insight.
I did, and one of the things that I mean, when I worked as a Republican, I don't think this was ever a thing. Or half the people working in my office were women, and I don't think any of them ever thought that abortion would ever be not available to them. There is a little bit of one rule for me, another for thee that applies a lot in conservative circles. Because ironically, again, the predominant consumer of abortion services are typically conservatives, not liberals, right? That was one of the great things that came out of a Southern Baptist survey last year, which was somewhere on the realm of 60% of respondents to their survey had an abortion. Even though the Southern Baptist Convention says abortion is wrong, and this was a survey specifically targeted at women, somewhere on the realm of 60% of their respondents had abortions. Because and this is what you hear from so many abortion clinic workers is it's very often conservative women coming in and saying, well, I'm not like them. I actually need one. Right.
Right.
So it's very much
I'm not a hoe.
Right.
That's the underlying message there. I'm not a tramp. I'm not a hoe. I'm not a skank. It's not birth control for me. It's fill in the excuse.
But I also want to move away just slightly from the abortion discussion, because obviously everyone's talked about that, right? Everyone everywhere has talked about
that horse is thoroughly beaten and
on this show. I have talked about it at length. Everyone, and we try not to beat a dead horse on a regular basis. And I wanted to point out part of the reason I brought this up was the multitude of other ways that this is happening.
This is the star of the show for the midterms this time, because of the history-making bullshit that we're living through. But it's just one of many factors.
It's the start, right? And I want to point out, like, the level of, like, the saddest story I read the other day, which is a woman who, again, like so many other women, who have abortions, she wanted to be pregnant. She was pregnant. She miscarried in utero, and her body did not expel the dead fetus. And she went so far as to contact her state senator in Missouri to be like, I need to have abortion services. Why? Because I'm carrying around a corpse inside my uterus. And he sent her to a fake clinic where the most that they could do for her was provide diapers for the corpse that was in her uterus, non-hospital grade pregnancy test, and counseling about Jesus.
So it's one of those places that's designed to change minds toward
right. But again, she's carrying a corpse.
But there's no mind to change here because one of them's like dead. Yeah.
And she pointed out that she was a pro-life. I hate using that term, pro-life, anti-choice activist. Like, and she had to drive to Illinois, and on top of it, Illinois had a backlog. She had to basically get to the point where she could get into emergency services in an Illinois hospital to remove the corpse from her uterus. If it had stayed any longer, she would have been rendered infertile for life.
Yep.
We talked about
get too far away from the abortion thing. I like the point that Brian makes here, because it sounds like it could be a reasonable alternative, and it's not. So if we remove the government funding aspect of abortions after a certain point, that line that conservatives want to draw, would that take away the talking point? But it won't, because
there already is no federal funding for abortion. So it's called the Hatch Amendment. It has been in place for decades. The Hatch Amendment goes on to every single bill about public funding anywhere. And the Hatch Amendment, named for former Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, says that there will be no federal funding ever for any abortion services ever. So the Hatch Amendment is still there.
Yeah, we've already tried that, and they haven't given up the zealot fight. But
I
like
want to
David
point
said, it goes far beyond,
it
and
goes
there's so
beyond,
many
and
other
I want to point out.
aspects.
So, first of all, hashtag repeal the 19th is a trending Twitter topic, and I want to point out how deep. And for those of you who don't know, hashtag the 19th. The 19th Amendment is what gave women the right to vote. The number of GOP candidates, and there's one actually up in your neck of the woods.
Oh, I'm sure it's motherfucking Gibbs.
Yep, it is Gibbs.
Yep. When I showed you the crazy mailer, I was taking David through the crazy mailers that we're getting. Gibbs is the dipshit race trader that's running for I forgot what office it is. It might be Senate
Representative,
right? So his opponent is Hillary Scholten, and these are the kind of like ridiculous fucking 5th grade Photoshop fucking bullshit mailers that they're sending to trash her. Like they had to have taken this image from like a campaign rally with young people where she thought, devil horns would be cool with the kitties. And then they've superimposed her.
How do you even know that those are her hands?
They might not be. That's fair. It might not be. But they've superimposed these like disembodied limbs and head onto Grand Rapids riots, which, like all the other riots in the summer of 2020, were entirely fucking justified based on fucking corrupt, abusive police culture. So,
and also did not, like they said, 100 businesses damaged. No.
Well, they're counting like every single broken window or scorch from someone lighting a hoodie on fire on the sidewalk outside. It's a very liberal description. And then they talk about 7 police cars being burned here in Grand Rapids. Interestingly enough, they weren't all Grand Rapids police. And my answer to that is, what the fuck were you doing here? Neighboring city. You shouldn't have had your fucking police cars here at all. So, there's that.
But
anyway,
so you have
one of the ones that's out there on my sign that says say no to the clown show.
Right. But you have conservatives talking about repealing the 19th Amendment.
Yeah.
Right.
Like full-throated, legitimate, like it's not euphemistic. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Where they're like, women shouldn't vote. You have conversations about wouldn't women be happier as simply homemakers? This guy Gibbs in Michigan made a huge, long academic argument about how women should be excluded from the workforce. Which, ironically, I want to say slightly ironically, it was women being excluded from the workforce that gave us the 40-hour work week, because it was assumed that men would come home and childcare and cooking and cleaning of the home would have been done by the wife that was at home, which is how they came up with the 40-hour work week. The irony is since now we have, in many cases, both parents working for less than minimum wage, or functionally, after inflation, less than minimum wage in the 1920s, that one of the stressors that happens in the American family on a regular basis is the fact that no one has enough time to do child rearing and maintain the homestead, because we make people work too much for too little to support a household on one income.
Yep.
So that is a thing. But back to the point, these are the things that are being talked about on the conservative right of why should women vote? We have gotten to that point, right? Yeah. We've blown past the whole minorities shouldn't vote, because they're just going to shut down the polling station where they are. So that's no longer an issue. That dog whistle has come and gone and turned into a bullhorn, and nobody in America has reacted by burning down these people's houses and dragging them out and burning them in the white sheets that they would prefer to be clothed in. Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about, if you think about how the effort to remove minorities from the voting pool has unfolded through policy and lawsuits in the light of day, right in front of all of us. If they pursue trying to pull back women's rights to participate in democracy, they won't feel any need to hide it. It'll be packaged up in some bullshit. It'll be just like these book bans. It'll be packaged up in some hyper, like, anecdotal fucking tales of shit that's not happening. And it'll be right in front of everybody. It won't be skullduggery and secret.
And I want to point out that one of the bigger... Oh, go for it.
Just wait until we go back to only landowners can vote. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's their next fucking bailiwick.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either.
You can't vote.
But I mean, you have Republican women, and this is one of the sad things about about women on the conservative side. And I've written on this a couple of times, and it's a very strict. There's two types of conservative women in my analysis, which is they are convinced that they, because of their position and money and everything else, will be a power behind the throne. And all these poor women deserve what they get because of gospel of prosperity, right? Mm-hmm. Just to let you all know, one of the conversations that we had before the show was I kind of had a pet about religion and government brewing, but I couldn't quite finish it. But one of the things that is part of that religion and government moments is this concept of I'm holier than thou art. I belong to the gospel of prosperity. I have more money than these poor women. I deserve an abortion. I deserve all these things because I'm wealthy. God has favored me. And, my rights won't really be curtailed because I have money.
Yeah, right.
And the other side of the coin is poor conservative women who find status and belonging in being police of other poor conservative women. And they find it gives them power.
Poor women in general.
Or poor women in general. But especially poor conservative women, because they can reach out and touch them.
Just in the next trailer.
Right. But I mean, it is an exercise of power that they don't have otherwise. Right.
Right. Well, it's that that's a classic conservative move is, hey, you know what? You're at the bottom. You are the sludge at the bottom of this vessel, but you're better than that sludge. At least you have that.
Right. Well, I mean, it goes all the way back to slavery. So slavery, the caste system was you had the planters at the top who could afford to own hundreds of slaves to work their plantations. Then you had the yeomen who could maybe own, 4 or 5 slaves to work their homestead. But then at the very bottom, you had the pine barons, right? These were people that's where the name Tar Heel for North Carolina comes from, were these people who were so poor, they didn't have any land to farm. They were dependent on extracting pine tar to make ends meet. These people could not own slaves. They didn't have enough money to own slaves. But the way white planters could keep them on side was, well, you may not have any money, but at least you're better than a black person.
Right. Yeah, at least you're better than this trash or this loser or this refuse or this savage or whatever fucking status they want to assign to those.
Yeah, because you look at these large numbers of people in the South who are willing to sign up and fight for the Confederacy, especially whites, and it was in large part was, well, you may be poor, you may not have any social standing, but at least as long as there's slavery, you're better than the slaves.
Yeah.
And if the slaves can farm, then you'll be lower than them, won't you?
Right. So we got the body autonomy issue, and we got the voting rights
Well,
thing.
and I want to come back to
You have on your
this aspect, because it's conservatives like this woman Abby Johnson, who wants to advocate for head of household voting, and she spoke at the RNC convention, and she advocates,
because of course she did,
for votes shouldn't be counted by people; it should be counted by head of household, which should be the male. I mean, the list goes on, and the number of and the number of GOP candidates in this current election cycle who have to clarify that they're not against women voting is and the thing is, this is not necessarily a new thing.
and
This
the
goes back,
clarification, it may not even be true.
this goes all the way back, and the earliest article like I could find in the recent election cycle is everyone's favorite skinwalker, Ann Coulter. And for those of you who haven't heard this theory, so I have this theory about Ann Coulter, which is Ann Coulter is actually the libbiest lib who ever lived a lib, like ever. And what she did one day is she found just a random conservative woman, and then she killed her and skinned her, and now wears her skin as a suit, right? To say the most outrageous shit that you could possibly fucking say, right? Because somewhere in her mind, she's like, if I say this, surely people won't follow conservatives, right? If I say this, if this shit actually comes out of my mouth.
She's just a repeatedly failing experiment. Oh my God.
So she was at Missouri State and openly said to everyone, women shouldn't be allowed to vote. And so I want to go past, and this is one of the things that I'm kind of getting at, which is we already know that conservatives want to take away birth control. We already know conservatives want to take away bodily autonomy. But I don't think we're having enough conversation about the fact that they want to take away the fucking vote, right? They want to take away women's right to own property. They want to turn women literally into chattel. And it's all in this effort to pump up the conservative male incel. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm going to tie this all kind of back in. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that male conservative who was complaining about the attractiveness of his wife because liberal women wouldn't have him because he was a fucking worthless, tiny cocked asshole.
Well, with the exception of a handful of Republican women, we tend to get all the babes over here on the left. Let's be real.
Well, and I want to point out the conservative women on the right who are the babes, are all rich and think of themselves as immune to any of these deprivations of rights. Right? They're like, well, I'm rich. I don't have to deal with this. And this is where we're at right now with conservatism in America, where it is not just simply the bodily autonomy. We have conservative pundits. We have conservative. There's a conservative commentator who I'm not even going to mention his name, and the reason I'm not going to mention his name is because it would give him more popularity than he already deserves. And he's already known for being outlandish and all the way on the right, all the way fascist. He gave an entire speech about how Jews worship Satan the other day, and I was like, I watched this because I need to know. You need to know the mind of your enemy.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, you're just looking at him being like, I mean, if you're willing to go here, you're already full Nazi. There's no other place for me. I can't insult you. I can't bring you back. You literally just again. We broadcast to YouTube. We broadcast to Facebook. We do not advocate violence against anyone. I'm just simply saying that if you're already that far gone, I'm not shocked when someone takes you out.
Well, yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's so many people that it's shocking that they walk down the street, unassaulted. for some of the shit that falls out of their mouths. But yeah, you're right to sound more than just the body rights alarm. That's the issue du jour. But in the long list of things they're coming for,
and again,
there's a lot more.
I want to point out that's part of what we try to do here is we try to say, hey, everyone's talking about this really awful thing, but there's something even worse right beyond it. And you know what normally happens when we talk about it on this show? It shows up.
A lot of times it ends up in the next couple of weeks in the news cycle to some extent. It's kind of funny. But the other big thing is, David, I think we're focused too much on the universal threats, right? Like we all know that they're coming for gay marriage and all these other things, but I don't think women have thought through how many of these issues that they could come for next are going to land squarely on women.
But by the way, I mispacked my bag, and I told you about. So for those of you who heard my earlier screed about,
is that the orange creamsicle?
I didn't realize I actually packed the orange creamsicle in my bag. This is actually good. Thank you, Edmund Zost. If your brewmaster is ever watching and is tired of me lampooning half your shit, because quite honestly, you fucking deserved it. This is actually good.
That's the one. Well, that brings us to the end, ladies and gentlemen. That is all we've got in it, especially me. I have run out all the spare energy I had with my sickliness for the week. So I'm going to slowly wind down into a NyQuil stupor. And hopefully tomorrow I will be back to full power. But as always, we appreciate you joining in. If you watch this back later, use that as an excuse to share it with some people.
Yeah, invite your friends. It'll be fun. You all can have a drunken watch party. We're always in favor of it. Bring your beers.
Learn our catchphrases. You can do shots.
Right.
All those things.
Brewing Controversy drinking contest. I'm for it.
Check out brewingcontroversy.com. It's the easy place to get to both of our destinations on the web. And don't forget, if you want to join in next week's Halloween party, let us know. It'll be fun. We're going to talk about the upcoming election.
But pumpkin beer. And nothing but pumpkin beer next week. I have an entire 6-pack lined up of pumpkin beer to inflict upon everyone.
A little all pumpkin beer. Some people are bringing some of their own. Some people are not bringing pumpkin beer. They're bringing other fall or Halloween appropriate things. But I and David will do nothing but pumpkin beer. So, yeah, and Kelly has a pumpkin car right there in her profile.
As a former Mini driver, I can't express my envy enough for your pumpkin car. I love your pumpkin car very much, Kelly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us. And as always, we wish you well with good night,
good evening,
and
good luck.